Hi guys, this is Chess Coach Aaron. How you doing? And I'm here for another video talking about the Petroff defense, or Russian defense. Alright, so this will be my second video of games out of 3. So I'll do one more video after this with some games. This one I decided to do just some student games of mine because a lot of my students do use the Petroff. They try it out. It's always good to try out different openings, see which one works for you. And this is, again, the Russian defense, Petroff defense. Again, it's an excellent starting opening because it's simple in terms of the number of things you have to learn just to get started. Doesn't make it a better or worse opening than any other opening. You can get good at any opening, no matter what the opening is. If you play it a lot, practice it, study it, of course. But this doesn't have a lot that you really need to study to get started, and that's the point. And black usually can very easily get very solid positions. I'm surprised more people don't play it. All right, so here's the beginning of the Petroff defense, right? We have e4, e5, and then when white plays knight f3, attacking a pawn, the number one move, as usual, is knight c6 to protect it. But instead, we're not going to protect it. We're going to create our own threat, an equal threat. You attack our e-pawn, we'll attack your e-pawn. Fair trade. All right, and this has the added benefit of being one step closer to kingside castling. That is actually one of the reasons why I like beginners to try this opening and use it, perhaps, because knight c6 is the number one move and it's great. But this is a queenside piece. It's harder to castle on the queen side versus you're already keeping up with white, who's trying to castle quickly, maybe, and use their rook. And you can do the same thing. All right, so this is, again, the Russian defense, Petroff defense, and these are 3 games I'm going to show from my students. But I'm not going to show the whole games. I actually only want to look at maybe the 10 first moves, just to show, again, this is for beginners mostly, just to see how other beginners are going to respond to this particular start of, the opening, the first 2 moves, and maybe what we should do. And I'll talk about these early moves, but I'm only really interested in opening, so I'm not even going to show the rest of the games. All right, let's get to that first game. All right, so here's the first game, and my student was playing black, of course, because we're playing the Russian defense, and his name is Asa. And a shout out to Asa, woot woot, using the Petroff defense, why not? And at the start of the game was very typical, of course, e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. We're in the Russian defense, the Petroff defense. And now we're going to start seeing different things that people do, right? And one of them I said is, we said the 3 forks in the road, 3 main ways to play this. Usually you're going to test out your opponent, by taking their e-pawn and see if they know to play d6. Most beginners are going to do this. But they don't have to do that here. They could play bishop out. They could play d-pawn forward, or very typically also as knight c3. And this protects from your threat and still keeps their threat alive, right? But this also invites black to try to play their knight if they're going to do the same moves and go to the 4 knights. And again, white will have the first move advantage perhaps. But I actually don't want to play knight c6, and Asa did not. He played bishop b4, my favorite third move in the Petroff defense against if they play knight c3. This already means black is ahead in the possibility of castling. I love it. And we're not worried about this pawn because we can always remove the defender of their e-pawn, getting it back. And by early castling, our rook can get on the e-file, their king still in the center, and we can even play queen to e7, same exact idea. So there's no way really for white to get this pawn and kind of keep it. And I think black has fine positions here no matter what. So the number 1 moves are to capture, to maybe play the pawn up and protect their pawn, so that way if the knight is removed, the guard is removed, there's something else guarding it, or bishop out. To c4 or to b5 at some point. Though b5 here is not great because there's no target, right? The knight has not played knight c6. Anyway, so his opponent did play bishop c4. And I like here being able to castle and get my rook over, but they brought up their bishop very smart so they could castle too. And this is a very aggressive spot. So bishop c4, great job, but now you're probably wondering, and we want to show this real quick, what would happen if white takes that pawn, right? Boom. All right, well, black has a bunch of good choices. The number 1 would be just to chase that knight away. Do that first, like we talked about with the Petroffs. Don't let this knight stay on your side of the board. You're opening up this bishop, and then we can get this pawn back. We can remove the guard, and we can get the pawn back at our leisure, at our discretion, at our thinking. And here's just a common little path. Many beginners will play the knight not back to f3, but to d3 because they're attacking the bishop. So The bishop was going to move the guard anyway. That happens. They take back with, I think the better way in this position would be the d-pawn. I don't think knight d3 is actually a good move, but let's just say they played it, and you take back with the d-pawn because now the bishop can come out to play, right? And maybe you can castle along, which once you have 4 pawns and where normally 3 pawns are on one side of the board, that's usually a great place to castle. So white might as well at least try to use the double C pawns after capturing. They could have captured with the B pawn, but I don't think that's a great way to respond in this position. Your pieces just aren't that happy. The bishop's not going to be great over here to begin with, and this is a rough structure to get started. Knight's in the way, these pawns can't move, so it takes a little bit for white to get, you know, their pieces reorganized. The black's already okay. All right, so we're talking about what if white took the pawn. Whoops, took the e-pawn. So far we have d6, right? We could also just simply remove the guard immediately. And again, taking with the d-pawn is probably the best way. And again, black has a bunch of ways to play from here. They could castle, they could go queen up, they could take the pawn now, and again, they could just chase the knight. So there's a lot of ways to play this, actually. So another choice would be play queen e7 first. And here, you're putting a heavy piece right down that e-line. Your e-pawn is gone, so now this queen exerts a ton of pressure. You're attacking the knight, and through the knight the pawn, and through those two things the king. And you can always remove the guard and get that pawn back whenever you want. Easy peasy. They could try to protect it, and then you could chase it. All right. Next, instead of all of that, and probably the move I like best is simply casting. Why not? You're head in being able to castle here, right? You just played bishop b4, right? Boop. And let's say they take that pawn. Boop. I say castle and use the rook as the major piece on the e-line, not the queen if you don't have to, because you still want to play this pawn forward, and having the queen behind it is helpful. It's very helpful. So your idea is to get the rook over in the heavy line, but there's 2 choices here for white. The number 1 would be if they put bishop c4, and now with the knight here and the bishop, you can't play rook e8. That would actually be a losing move. Bishop would take. Now you still have the option of the queen, and again, you're going to get your pawn back. They can't really stop it, and again, you're doing fine. The other option would be, instead of bishop c4, they put the bishop on e2. I've seen this a lot, and now the rook over is excellent. And you're going to get your pawn back again, and your pieces are very active. It's all about actually when you can get your pawn to d5, really take part of the center. And since you're going to get your pawn back, and then you can play d5, white really can't stop it. Black's doing wonderful here. All right, so that's if they took on e5. The player against Asa, though, he played bishop c4, which makes a lot of sense. All right, protecting the pawn, d6, makes sense. They now played d3 themselves, protecting the pawn in case this gets removed, makes sense. And by the way, this formation for white is now the Gioco Piano. This would be what white plays against the Gioco Piano, or as the Gioco Piano opening. But it's not really Gioco Piano because black has not played knight c6. Black has some flexibility here. If black had played an early knight c6 or still puts a knight there, then this really would officially be a Gioco Piano opening. Which is kind of a slow maneuvering opening for e4, e5, but it's very strong, but both sides can get good pieces. So black's doing fine here, and they don't have to play knight c6 going to the Gioco Piano. Instead, Asa plays something very interesting, but it's a Gioco Piano idea. I don't know if it's really correct here to play this, but it's very interesting. In the Gioco Piano, many times white will play bishop to e3, and this bishop will trade because many times it's on c5, and the same for black. Many times the bishop will go to e6, challenging their good bishop, but the bishop can take on e6, allowing doubled pawns. Well, when the f-pawns go to either e3 or e6, because it can happen for either side sometimes, it actually is not that bad. This pawn will help support your d-pawn going forward, take it over to center, and since there's no pawn on the f-line, a rook there for either side will be very strong once you castle, or you can still castle along and put rooks on there. So those are some ideas. It's not necessarily bad. And now there's ideas the queen can develop forward, if you want to castle along, especially behind the bishop. All right. It's tough to go queen e7. At the wrong time, this knight will get a tempo. Right now it's pinned. And I actually think the correct move here perhaps is just to remove the knight, mess up their pawns, and then if you want to play bishop e6, okay. I like the idea of messing up their pawns as soon as possible once white gives it. That's how I like to play. Doesn't mean it's the best move, but that's how I like to play. I'm willing to give up bishops to mess up pawns. All right. Now, white decided to play back, which is also very often in the Gioco Piano. And here, Asa played knight c6, so we actually are at basically a Joko piano opening, even though it started off with Petroff. So many times it'll happen. You'll go to another opening. All right, let's just finish this up real quick and get to the next game. I wanted to show 3 student games, and this is the first one, and so far Black's doing fine. They unpinned the knight. Asa played queen forward, wants the castle long. I'm not sure why h3 is necessarily played. I mean, it does take away a lot of options from Black's pieces over here, but were Black pieces going there now? I don't know. So Asa decided to castle long. All right, I mean, you can do that kind of stuff in these type of positions. I do like to make my opponent guess, though. Which way am I going to castle for as long as possible? So that would mean you can decide how you're going to maybe make some small moves here. You could even capture the bishop at the right time if you want to go that way instead. Though I don't like making trades unless I get something for it. But doubling up pawns many times is a good way to play. If white moves their a-pawn forward, though, I would like to take their bishop and they have to take back with the c-pawn. But if they play a3, they're actually attacking our bishop. So it's tough to take their bishop and b3 with our bishop attacked. So Asa castled long, interesting. They played a3 and did exactly what I said, and I would love to have the opportunity, if I was playing Black, to take that bishop on b3, but it doesn't work yet. This is actually not the right time to do it. I would love for them to take with the c-pawn because now this is what I'm looking for. If I'm Black, I can back up, and we totally control this dark square d4. There is no pawn for white that can chase our pieces away, so our pieces now would dominate, and we would control that spot. These pawns are all over here clustered, and yes, they can go forward, but they can't control d4. That'd be great for Black. But you'll notice, instead of taking the bishop on b3, white can simply take on b4. Now, white is attacking that bishop. That's a threat. They also have b5 attacking our knight. That's a threat, because once the knight moves, this rook, which is now open, will take the a7 pawn. This is actually winning for white, or much better for white. Not good. So Black does not have time to take the bishop on b3 yet. So Asa saves the bishop, of course. And very smartly, they take the bishop. They can't let Black capture on b3 because that would mess up their pawn structure in a bad way, in a very bad way. Messing up pawn structures doesn't always mean it's a bad way. For example, Asa created double pawns. He had a choice. He could have taken with the queen. And it's actually not a bad choice. Perhaps that is the right choice even. But taking with the pawn is very interesting because this pawn will support the d-pawn going forward. And the e-pawn, for the moment, is protected by the knight. The only bad thing is with this setup, and what is happening is, because Asa's castle long, he is giving white the opportunity to expand and do perhaps a storm towards this king. So he's got to get his own storm going to try to get this king. And they haven't even castled yet. But Black is still equal here. And that's exactly what happened. Bishop goes back, and this is kind of where we'll stop. This bishop can run over to d4 if needed. The knight can still go here. Yes, though, they can expand. And if they go forward, right, this knight can jump over here instead and block this up. So the pawns can't go and open up lines. When you are attacking on opposite sides, which looks like that's the kind of game that's going to end up here, you want to get an open line. Well, Black already has an open line on the F line, so maybe they can use it. But they still need to get these pawns up and cause some havoc on the white side. But we'll stop here, and Black's still doing fine. Excellent job, Asa. All right, let's get to game 2. All right, this is another game from my students. His name is Arush. And shout out to Arush. Woot, woot. He used the Petroff. Why not? All right, let's see what happened here. And common start. And many beginners and most players will take that pawn and test out to see if you know it. Arush knows to play d6, chase the knight away, gets his pawn back, and already I feel like Black is doing fine. So early in the game, we've only done 4 moves, and I think Black is already doing fine. Here, and this does happen in many beginner games, they chase the knight away. Why not? You chase their knight away, they want to chase your knight away. I think that's a good move. And he plays back to the king side. I think it's much better than going to the queen side. And normal development, but we're going to start talking real quick. What should white play? Should play d4. And this is an important thing. In this position, both players should get their pawns forward. Both players should make all their pieces happy. Well, right now, kingside piece for Black, not happy. Kingside piece for white, not happy. Whoops, my arrows are awful today. So, getting space is important. And if white played d4 first, they're even threatening to get space by playing d5, and then it can support the pawn with c4. Black has to respond, really, I think, has to respond with d5 right now. Can't let white getting d5 first, because then suddenly black would be very cramped. So you're actually seeing if black's going to respond properly, and you're making your piece very happy. So this is the correct move. You can still play knight c3 after you start moving this pawn forward. Why not? But anyway, so you play knight c3. It's a good developing move. And Arush plays bishop g4. Again, a good developing move. What should black play, though? Just like white should have gone d4, black should go d5. Take over the center. Make the kingside bishop, dark squared bishop happy. And actually, black has a little threat. Going forward, taking space with tempo, with a free attack on the knight. So white needs to play and stop that with d4. You're going to see this for the next couple of moves. All right, so Arush pinned the knight, and they decided to unpin the knight. I tell you what, even here, even though this knight is pinned, so white can play h3, chase the bishop, but I still rather d4. Get that center. Take as much space as you can. Go forward. And this is a common theme in the Petroff. Once the e-pawns are traded, then both players should be moving their d-pawns forward. That's what I think. Grab that space. Grab that center. All right, so he unpinned and he can castle. All right. And Arush did the same idea. His knight wasn't actually pinned, but he said, all right, my opponent wants to castle, I'll castle. I don't want to keep repeating it, but black should play d5. It's important to point this out. It is important because that is the best move. There's not always a best move, a number one move. Many times there's a lot of good choices. Here, though, I really believe that's the best move, so I keep repeating it. All right, he played bishop e7. They castled. I'm not going to say it again. d4 for white, and d5 for black should have been played. And finally, after the castling, white does play d4. Black needs to play, d5 now. They need to. Even with this knight here, because you'd rather have a pawn supporting a pawn in these type of positions. But even here, d5 is very hard for black to get the pieces out properly. d5 means the knight can't go to its favorite spot. This pawn can't go forward and unleash the bishop if needed on the queen side. So this is a great idea for white, and it needs to be stopped by black. So he he played his bishop back. Now this bishop's already happy. It's not threatened, it's not attacked, they didn't play h3, but he moved it back to f5. Now I can understand, in the middle game, we do talk about recognizing which of your pieces could be better, could get to a new place, a better place, move the second time. But right now, you still haven't moved the knight, still haven't moved the rook, haven't moved the queen, haven't gained center space. Making this bishop happier is more important than making this bishop happier because the light-squared bishop is already doing some work. It's already got lots of pressure on the, the white pieces and on the king side, and it's not being attacked. So really, d5 should be played. And if you're not going to play d5, at least think about what you're going to do with this knight. All right, he played bishop f5, and the opponent played bishop f4. Let's run through the last couple of moves. Finally, Arush played d5, whoop, whoop, whoop. And they played knight b5, kind of aiming over at the c-pawn, kind of having their pieces work together. But black can easily stop that. Black should just play knight h6, and that protects the pawn. And you say, Coach Aaron, a knight on the corner or edge of the board is not so good. Well, we've all heard that. But this knight is not doing a whole lot here. Once you play knight a6, let's just make this move for fun. Now this knight and his bishop, yes, they're focused, but you can play c6, gets the pawn off of c7, attacks the knight. Knight's got to run away. And now you have a path to the center. c7 and e6 for this knight. And this knight does some good work over on e6. It aims on the king side and center, and it's a nice place to have the knight, actually. So it takes a little work, but one of your moves, c6 with a pawn, is a free move. And once you play c6 and this knight runs away, their knight wasted some turns, right? It came over to b5 for no reason, and it's going to give you another turn running away. So that'll kind of make up for your knight taking a long journey to e6. But all right, after knight b5 from white, I think black, again, is totally fine after knight a6. Successful Petroff's Russian defense opening. Real quick, they played bishop b4. Bishop f4, sorry. I don't know why I said b4. So they played bishop f4. Again, once you give someone an opportunity to play their d-pawn forward, grab that opportunity in Petroff. Arush did. But if we back up before they play bishop f4, and this last thing I want to look at this game, and I'll go to the last game real quick, is the fact that white has the opportunity to do this move I keep talking about. Black hasn't stopped the white from playing d5, right? Here are the last couple of moves. d4. Arush moved his bishop a second time. Now white has the chance to play d5, and notice what I'm talking about. Knight can't go to its favorite place. Bishop is really trapped in here, which means it's harder for the queen to come out and play also. This is called cramped, and black is getting cramped. Black now has to spend time trying to get rid of this pawn, which they can do, but now it's still tough because the only real way to get rid of this pawn is to trade it, and they can only really trade it with the c pawn safely. They can't really do anything else to get rid of this pawn, the d5 pawn from white, which is holding the black position back. So they have to play c6. Now, if white captures, well, that just helps black. They can either take with the pawn, and now they have these two pawns working together, and they can go forward like a snowplow. Or, if black really wanted, they could just capture with the knight, developing it towards the center. And then they do have this weak pawn because no other pawn can protect it. And white can focus on it. So take with the knight makes sense to develop it, but actually, if white captures, there is this brief moment to put the pawns together, making them strong like a snowplow. But does white actually need to capture? The answer actually is, after c6, no. They have to make black capture, and they'll have something still sitting on d5, holding the black position back. And they can develop here. Now, there's a bunch of moves that white can develop, right? You can play rook e1, can play bishop e3, bishop f4, focusing on what will be a weak pawn, right? They could even play knight d4. I love this move because now the knight's moving here into the sweet center, into the middle of the board. Knights are slower pieces with tempo, with a free move, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes back to stay on this long diagonal, affecting the center. And now black has two things attacking that pawn, only one defender. So is it good to put the white knight in the center? Do we have to move it again? No. Now that this bishop has a new place to go, now that the knight has moved out of the way, and selling bishop f3. And I like white's position here. Oh my gosh. They are really controlling that sweet center and have pieces sitting there. And again, black's position is very cramped. All right. But after black out on d5, boom. I think black's position is totally fine. All right, let's get to that third game real quick. I'm running out of time for this video. I'm actually not even going to talk about it. I'm going to run through it for my students' game, and let's go to that game. All right, let's just run through some moves, and we'll see what happened here. Chase that knight away, get our pawn back, and now white played a move which is not a great move, putting the bishop in front of their pawn. Not a great move. Kind of cramps all of white in. So you are attacking the knight, but black has a lot of easy options here. I probably would play, now, the student that played knight c5, that was their response. His name is Luca, by the way. Shout out to Luca. Luca, boop, boop, boop. Petroff defense, nice. And this does kind of make some sense. I don't mind this move at all. Normally I say it's a king side piece. Don't move it to the queen side. But with the bishop on d3, jumping out of the way and threatening to take that bishop and mess up these pawns, well, that does make some sense. Unfortunately, if you look closer, this queen can do a check and protect the bishop. So this is not so important for the moment, but it's still a good move. I would actually rather just play d5. So, for example, we talk a lot about white getting their d-pawn going and black too. Well, just because they're attacking the knight doesn't mean you have to run away. You can protect it in the right situation. Here, many times with Petroff, you have to be careful about protecting it, but you can get away with playing d5 here. And you can get your bishop up and castle very quickly, because if they try to do something over here, pile up on this knight, which they're trying to do, and they've pinned it. But the difference is there's no pawn that will attack the knight. So you can either get out of the way and castle, giving up a pawn, but their queen will be in the center, and you'll get a lot of free moves, right? Boom, 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 boom. And now, even though white's up a pawn, they have to be very careful here, right? There's this open line, so they better castle right away. None of these pieces have been developed. Black actually gets the first chance to bring their pieces out and perhaps get a free move or two on the queen. How many free moves are worth a pawn? Well, some people think 3. If you're going to think about getting free moves where you attack your opponent's pieces, they usually think 3 of them is worth a pawn. All right. But I also think controlling these 4 squares is very important on top of that. And I think once black plays rook e8, the major pieces are controlling the board. The knight's going to come out right away. I think black controls these 4 squares, or will control them very quickly too. All right. We actually don't have any more time really to talk too much on this video. Sorry I couldn't go through more of the moves, Luca, but we kind of have to stop it here. But play the Petroff. good positions for black. I love it, and I hope you try it. My students are trying it, and I love it. This is Coach Aaron out. Peace.